At maturity, coastal redwood trees grow to about 350 to 370 feet tall. For context, that's roughly goalpost to goalpost on a regulation-sized football field. It's as tall as the Statue of Liberty. If you've ever wanted to be a tree hugger, a redwood's a great place to start, as long as you're cool with linking arms with 12 to 15 of your best friends and kind of doing like this. Redwoods are enormous, so it would stand to reason then that their roots must run very deep. Actually, the roots of a redwood tree reach down only about 3 to 6 feet in the sandy, loamy soil in which they grow best. 3 to 6 feet, that's about it. Instead, those roots grow outward in long networks, intertwining with the roots of the trees around it, sometimes even becoming fused. It's literally the strength of the many that holds up the one. Now, when I think of what the roots of a redwood tree look like, it's sort of what I imagine the brain might look like, as synapses are wiring and things are firing and information is passing from one side of the brain to the next, much like food and water passes across roots of a redwood tree. It's a network and an infrastructure in our brain that's wiring for growth. All right, so I'm not a doctor, clearly. I'm just a mom. I'm a mom who has read books and gleaned as much information and tried to learn as much as I possibly can about a child's early brain development. So from my layperson's perspective, here's what I've come to learn. Before a baby is born, the brainstem is the first part of the brain to develop in utero. It's the thing that controls involuntary actions, things like the fact that you just do breath into your lungs, or the fact that your heart is beating in your chest even now without you even thinking about it. The brainstem is also responsible for our most primal fight or flight reaction. And when we're faced with a threat, the brainstem literally takes over and tells the rest of the brain, don't even worry about it, I've got this. The brainstem is responsible for the core of what keeps us alive. Now, when a baby is born, their brain is most open to learning, and they're gathering information at an incredible rate about the world around them. They're learning cause and effect, things like, I'm hungry, and I cry, and someone brings me food. Awesome. Or I'm lonely, and I cry, and someone picks me up and holds me, gives me nurturance and love. But what about when a baby, when their environment is not met with those same cause and effect situations? Instead, what about when a baby is met with, I'm hungry and I cry, but there is no food? Or I'm lonely, I'm scared and I cry, but no one's coming. Well, a baby's brain is gathering information about that as well, and it's learning really there's no point in crying because no one's coming. Adults don't take care of you. You can't trust them. And if you're going to survive in this world, it's up to you to take care of yourself. That early brain wiring is what's responsible for something called reactive attachment disorder. I'd love to tell you about Elle. Elle is vibrant and active. She is impossibly perceptive. That girl sees everything. She loves pancakes with sprinkles in them. She loves Jeep rides with the top off. And if you were downtown a few Saturday nights ago, she was the one with her bubble wand out of the top of the Jeep, letting the wind blow bubbles into the summer air behind her. That girl is hilarious. She can crack jokes and farts that'll make you laugh and groan at the exact same time, much like any 8-year-old. She's amazing. Elle came into my family's life unexpectedly, like a leaf blown in on a breeze in October of 2013. She was the granddaughter of a former employee, and I came to know about this little girl who needed a place to stay. And so I just said, well, she can stay with me. I knew her family had some things that they needed to get figured out and squared away. A couple months before, she had been removed from where she was living in a 2001 Chevy Impala on a gravel road on a reservation somewhere in North Dakota. She was with our family for 2.5 months, and then again, another breeze blew her along like a leaf to be with another relative in another zip code. She was there for a year, gone from us for a year, and then tumbled her way back in when she was removed from that situation for unsafe living conditions and neglect. In her formative first 36 months of her life, when her brain was gathering all this information, she learned not to trust. Her brain was wired for survival. She learned early on that cause and effect of the world around her. And now I can say wired for survival, and on a surface level, you can think you probably know what that means, but the way the brain works in a child with reactive attachment disorder and PTSD is so misunderstood. It's a disconnect that can look like an inability to give or receive love. I call it her dish rag hugs, when she can come in to the side for a hug and she sort of goes through the motion, but there's really no emotion behind it. It's really hard as a parent when you give your child a hug and they bristle against you. It makes me question my parenting worth. Like, if I can't have my child give or receive love, then what does that say about me? Reactive attachment disorder can also look like a compulsion to control every situation, small situations. But for instance, I might say, today we're gonna go to the grocery store, the car wash, and the bank. And she'll say, we're gonna go to the car wash first. Which, you guys, it doesn't matter one iota if we go to the car wash first, right? But what she's doing is she's trying to gain control. And again, what's the big deal? It doesn't matter. But when she gains control in those small situations over and over and over again, she's proving to herself that she can take care of herself, make the decisions, and she doesn't need adults to survive. She's literally fending off her own attachment. It can also look like an inability to handle everyday situations. From an early age, say 3, we would notice these tantrums that were deeper, more intense than anything I'd ever experienced. I'd try to explain it to people, but they'd always say, oh, that's just how kids are. She's 3, she'll go through it. Only, I've parented 3 kids before her, and this was like nothing I had ever seen. We noticed they started to be clustered together. Like if she was gonna have 1, she was gonna have 2 or 3. They were clustered together, and it seemed like when she got off balance, it was really hard for her to find her way back to center. But now, when adoption was finalized in October of 2016, of course things were going to get better. She would know that stability was here. She had a forever home. Love was freely given, and we were so excited to join her on her healing journey. Of course, things were about to get better. But that's what's so tough for people to understand about reactive attachment disorder is instead of things getting better, the deeper the relationship goes, the worse it actually gets. See, relationships are scary, and the more the brain fights against it, it's like they're trying to sabotage the relationship because it seems way too good to be true, while at the same time being terrified of making a mistake and losing it. She goes into overdrive, and everyday frustrations are really difficult for her to handle. Things that are simple, like being told that you need to brush your teeth, take a shower, and comb your hair before you can have screen time. It seems like she just can't handle those things. She goes into overdrive, and like I said, in an instant, she loses all reason. She goes into a tailspin. Now, you or I can say that, maybe we've had a bad day, and we can say, man, I cannot handle one more thing. But even those of us who might struggle with our patience probably have a pretty reasonably sized window of tolerance. Again, the number of things that we can accept in a day. For kiddos with reactive attachment disorder, their window of tolerance is exponentially smaller. And those everyday little frustrations send them into a tailspin. Again, after adoption, instead of things getting better, they actually got worse. And in the months and years that went by, these tantrums would escalate. And behind closed doors, people could have no idea what was happening. Anxiety and rage would take over her body so fully that she would scratch the undersides of her arms until they'd bleed. She screamed so long and so loud one morning that she burst the capillaries around her eyes. And the visual reminder of that episode lasted long after it had finished. With a flip of a switch, she was out of her brainstem. Things were getting worse. After an episode, she's just exhausted. And I remember once as the rage turned to tears and her little body was just spent, she started to say, "Owie, Mommy, it hurts, it hurts, it hurts." And I said, "What, baby? Tell me what hurts. Tell me what hurts." I will never forget the look on her face as she slid down the wall, fully exhausted, and said, "Everything hurts." I was completely at a loss. We had tried everything. We felt helpless. She had been in counseling and play therapy weekly since she was 3 years old. And again, things weren't getting better. They were only getting worse. I talked to a friend of mine who actually works in child protection, was really familiar with Elle's case. And she said, "Melissa, I know you're trying, and it's not your fault, but what you're doing is not helping. If she had a broken leg, you wouldn't just put a Band-Aid on it and then praise the days, be excited about the days when she didn't limp. No, if she had a broken leg, you would get her to a doctor and you would get her the help she needed." And so in May 31st of 2018, my little one entered a PRTF. So a PRTF, that's a psychiatric residential treatment facility. See, our family has learned symptoms and diagnoses. We have learned to navigate the lingo and learn systems we never even knew existed. She was in residential treatment for 652 days, nearly 2 long years. But while she was there, she worked really, really hard, and we worked to best understand her and meet her needs and help her grow and thrive. And she made so much progress. She was nearing her discharge date this spring, and we were so excited to visit the school where she would go. And again, she was just so excited about discharge coming up. She'd made so much progress that as we visited the school this day, there was this lovely little girl who came over. I mean, bless her nurturing little soul. She came over and rubbed Elle on the leg and said, "It seems like you're a little scared, but you don't have to be scared. We're all really nice here." Oh my gosh, this girl, I was so compassionate. I was just really thankful. But on the way home that afternoon, Elle looked out the window and she was quiet. And finally she said thoughtfully, "You know what, Mom? Sometimes I really don't like to be touched." You guys, this was huge. She was learning to express her needs, identify what they were to begin with, communicate them, and stay on the level. It was huge. We were excited. She was coming home. I'm a big fan of bows. You put a bow on something, you wrap it up, neat, tidy, present, perfect package. I was so excited to give this TED Talk tonight and to talk about reactive attachment disorder. I was excited to tell you about her story, cause and effect, and then getting help and everything being great in the end. Perfect story arc, right? Only I'm finding bows don't exist on mental health packages. And many times it starts and stops, lots of progress, setbacks, and sometimes it feels like you're right back at square one. Elle was discharged on March 13th this year into the world of COVID. And all of her excitement and expectations about going to school and making new friends and playing with the friends she already had were dashed in an instant. The therapist we were given a new therapist, and she was going to come into our home once, twice weekly if needed. And suddenly she was no longer able to come due to COVID. So Elle went from full inpatient therapy, where every second of her day was structured, to the world of COVID, where there was very little ability to establish any kind of routine. And her disappointments and things like the dogs barking and loud noises triggered flare-ups of her PTSD. She would find herself out of her window of tolerance, back down into her brainstem, to where things like even the doorbell ringing would send her diving under tables or hiding behind chairs. She was back into her brainstem once again. Things culminated with some really scary and harmful violence. Descriptive threats of things that she said she would do to herself and to others. Until one Thursday night, we found ourselves completely scared, completely disheveled, doing an emergency admittance into behavioral health. A few days later, she was transferred back to her psychiatric residential treatment facility. I felt like I'd failed her once again. It wasn't the bow that I thought I was going to put on this package tonight and bring to you again, cause, effect, perfect story arc. It's not what I thought we'd be talking about, but still, I wanted to talk to you about reactive attachment disorder because I need you to understand. We need you to understand because Elle and kids like her, both in and out of the system, are affected by it, and it's affecting you, and it stems from birth parents who weren't given the tools that they needed to be successful parents because their parents weren't given the tools and their parents weren't given the tools. I needed to talk to you about this tonight and help you understand because knowledge helps break chains. I need you to understand that parents of kiddos with reactive attachment disorder are behind closed doors, giving everything they can, doing what they think is best, even when it's the hardest thing they've ever done. And Elle needs you to understand her. Because kids with reactive attachment grow up to be your kids' classmates. They grow up to be your coworkers. And they grow up to be adults who will parent children themselves. Dr. Bruce Perry is an expert in the field of child psychiatry and reactive attachment disorder. He says by conservative estimates, 40% of American children will go through at least one traumatizing event before age 18. But what matters most is not the event itself. No. It's how the community of adults stands tall around them. We need you to be redwoods. Because even if we look like redwoods, the truth is, every single day we feel like we're failing and we feel like we're falling down. Again, what matters most is how we hold each other up and can rely on one another. He says, fire can warm or consume. Water can quench or drown. Wind can caress or cut. And so it is with human relationships. We can both create and destroy, nurture and terrorize, traumatize and heal one another. No, this isn't the bow that I thought I was going to put on this package and bring to you tonight. It's not the story that I had hoped, because there aren't any bows and things are messy. But still, I'm learning about those redwood trees. I'm learning how they hold one another up. And I'm learning about their roots. Elle wasn't given the roots that one would hope in her early years. But still, those roots have been determined. They have been resilient, and they have grown outward again. They have touched the lives of so many others. I have to believe that the roots that are forming in her life every single day are the ones that will hold her up, standing tall and strong as she grows. I have to believe in her healing. And even when it's really, really hard, I have to believe in hope. So tonight I'm asking you to be a strong redwood and stand tall and believe in that hope with us.